talking to? What are you trying to prove to everyone else? Who is superior? How is your vision clearer than anyone else? Your head's in the sky, in flight, but you will crash and burn. But you will crash it!
Welcome to Agency Land, a podcast about advertising, ambition, and the lies we tell ourselves to survive both. I'm Jai Smith, and this is your survival guide. Today's guest started his career at BBDO New York on the global M&M's account. He came back to Australia, worked at BMF and Naked Communications, and then co-founded Tong, an ideas agency he sold to STW, which became part of AKQA Asia Pacific. He judged Australia's Next Top Model for 5 seasons along Sarah Murdoch, Charlotte Dawson, and Alex Perry. He launched a fashion label into 13 countries. He's the founding creative director of Sown Hearts and Minds, which has donated over 50 mil into medical research, and he personally coaches speakers including Ray Dalio, Bill Ackman on their pitches. He wrote a book called Winning the Room, a book I personally recommend to anyone in advertising, anyone who is just speaking to anyone. It is a great book. I can't speak highly enough about it. I keep a copy in my car. He directs films. He's a creative consultant and a chief creative officer at We Are Unity. Please welcome to the show, Jonathan Pease. How are you, mate?
Good, Jai. How are you?
I'm very cool.
That intro makes me sound like an average person at everything and a master at none, which may well be true. Let's be frank. That may well be true.
Absolutely not. I was doing the research and I had completely forgotten about Next Top Model. That was, and all the magazine covers, and it was incredible. Who am I speaking to today? Which version of JP?
Look, I have no idea. It's a very good question. Look, I've had a patchwork career, not by design, but way back when I sort of, did pretty badly at school, considered university, I thought to myself, what if I didn't choose, but instead I tried to, experiment with a bunch of things, try a bunch of careers and see what worked.
Yeah.
I haven't really stopped doing that, right? I'm still experimenting, and I'm not done. I've got more things I'd like to do, which are going to seem relatively unrelated.
What has been the red thread for you, though? Is there something that connects with, like, they're obviously all creative, but I think that's too soft a word to describe them.
Yeah. Look, I mean, communication and creativity, they're the two things that link absolutely everything I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's almost like similar music, but picking up a different instrument to play it.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of fun, made a lot of mistakes, had a few wins. And yeah, but I'm just here to keep learning and keep trying new things, really.
I love that idea and I love that analogy. I think a lot of the people that I've spoken to, and even when I, again, read back their career, they're kind of surprising themselves at how they got to the point they're at today. If we go right back to the start, starting in New York, what was it like? Give us a sense of what it's like to work in one of those really big agencies and one of the biggest accounts, and what did you learn and what didn't you learn there?
Yeah. So can I go back even one layer further? And I just say that because this is probably going to inform, well, it certainly informed my life, and it may well inform this conversation. So I'm quite a sort of romantic in the sense that I'll read a book and then I will not try and do that book in real life, but I'll almost use that as like a narrative, and then I'll go and follow steps that I saw in that book or that movie. So why did I go to New York in the first place to work for that big agency? Well, I was read Eloise as a child. It's a book about a little girl that lives in a hotel in New York and has the most incredible time. So the seed of New York was planted for me when I was probably, 10, 12, in that zone, right? Then I watched Secret of My Success, the Michael J. Fox film, where he goes from Kansas to New York and hustles his way into a big corporation, et cetera, et cetera. So those two things collided, and that was what made me choose New York over London. London would have been a hell of a lot easier, and I had an easy job in London. Instead, I went to New York, knew nobody, and yes, eventually stumbled my way into BBDO, which turned out to be an incredible experience. Anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of that because I imagine as we go through questions,
Yeah.
now have a book or a movie or a story
that
touched me that I then went and followed.
Just on that point, that choice, that's a very powerful thing to say. You had a choice between London and New York. What was that choice, and how did you get to that point?
Well, I mean, I've got dual citizenship, so I've got a British passport. My parents were from the UK. I've got 3 brothers in the UK. I had an easy start into a great career and job. So that was option 1, and half of my friendship group were already there.
Yeah.
Option 2 was go to New York, know nobody, no connections, have to get a working visa, no relative, so it was sort of easy versus hard. And yeah, I'm not going to say that I picked the hard road, but I basically followed that idea and that story that I had in my mind of going to New York and making it. And I just wanted to sort of romantically try and bring that to life. So that was the main reason I made the choice. I happened to be a model at that time, so I went with Ford Model Agency, and then I met Diane von Furstenberg, who's a fashion designer, who introduced me to Phil Dusenberry, who was like the guy in marketing and advertising at the time. He then dragged me into BBDO. So it was sort of sliding doors, chance scenario. But yeah.
What was your first role there? And how do you go from model to agency guy?
Yeah, it's a good question. Not easily.
You're just standing on the wrong side of the camera one day?
Yeah, correct. No, look, I mean, there was no, I wasn't on the set of an ad and then someone said, hey, work for us. It was literally personal connections. I'd struck up a friendship with a big fashion designer. She happened to know the biggest guy in advertising and basically said, hey, would you like to meet? Which I did. And then, eventually got the job. Mate, I was about as junior as it comes, like account coordinator, I think was the term. Just doing the jobs that nobody else wanted to do, organizing meetings, trying to get out of presenting ideas and just, riding along, trying to learn.
What skills did it teach you in those early days, being the smallest cog in one of the biggest agencies in the world?
Yeah, I mean, look, you are a result of the people that are around you, and the people that I worked with at BBDO New York were the best in the world at the time. My boss was particularly brilliant at most things, especially presenting, as in presenting ideas and selling clients on ideas and things. I learned certainly the importance of presenting and communicating. I learned how to work hard, like properly hard. We were in early, out really late, and then going out on the town and then back in early. So it was sort of like a play hard, work hard scenario. But I mean, we were pulling 12-hour days every day.
Yeah.
Often on weekends as well. So yeah, I guess I learned a pretty strong work ethic. And then probably the third thing I learned, which I still hold on to today, I got to rub shoulders with pretty big names in the industry, also, actors, singers, celebrities, what have you. And I just kind of realized that everyone's sort of the same. It just doesn't really matter. So, these days I'm just taking everyone for who they are in the moment, don't care how rich you are, how famous you are, how successful you are. Of course, coming to everyone with respect, but just as much for the person answering the phone as the person in a big Hollywood blockbuster.
Absolutely.
We're all, we're all doing our best. We all have problems. We all have strengths. So yeah, New York really beat that into me because you get a ton of access, like huge access to big people in all sorts of walks of life. So yeah, that was very useful, and I still hang on to that today.
Yeah, what great foundation skills for just a young person, especially being a young man, where I find in agency we're the brashest, where, your ego is bigger than your head, you fall over it, you get knocked down. But what a good grounding to realize that people are people. It like takes you so long to learn that sometimes. So that's wonderful.
God, and speaking of egos, like BBDO New York was full of egos. Like some of the stories of interacting with, the big creative directors and other people in the agency, let alone beyond our agency. I mean, they're of legend. They're just, it's detached from what would now be acceptable. And, it's just completely different. And hopefully we'll never quite go back there, even though I loved my time. But looking back, I can see where, edges were crossed. Let's just put it that way.
I found a quote from you that said, I knew I wanted to start my own agency. It was my plan from day one. And I think you came back in 2003. You went through BMF, Naked, Mambo as well, I think I read as well. What were you learning at those places that were setting you up to set up your own agency?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's another one of those examples. I had a story in my mind that I would run my own agency. I had no qualifications or reason to believe that would be more true for me than anybody else. But I kind of hang on to stories, as I said earlier. So I wanted to do that. I then got advice from someone at university who basically said, well, if you want to have an agency, you need to start in account management. That was their point blank advice. So I went and did that. I started it as a suit, and then I eventually moved over to creative. If I'm honest, I probably would have been, I was better suited to be in the creative department from day one, but I'd been given this advice and it seemed like sage advice, which is exactly why I did that. And yes, I learned a ton in account management about people and managing expectations and delivering and doing what you say you're going to do. And, realizing closing the loop is more important than just having the vision, having the idea. So a lot of those disciplines that don't necessarily show up, let's say in creative types, and that's a giant generalization. There are lots of creative types who are brilliant at execution. But my point is, okay, let's put it to me. I don't think I had those skills. I think I was big on idea, big on vision, big on, dreams, but not very good at following through, execution, closing the loop, managing expectations. Well, I got that from account management in spades because there was, BBDO New York was a lovely place to work, one of the most fun jobs I've ever had, but it was, not a forgiving workplace. Like if you didn't do what you meant to do, you got absolutely handed your derriere. So, I learned the hard way that, you need to dot your I's, cross your T's.
Was there a cultural difference coming back to Australia from the New York agencies?
God, so different. I mean, the first part of the cultural difference was going to New York, working in advertising. It's not like it is today where everyone's an Australian. I was the only Australian at BBDO.
Wow.
Mate, 1,500 people in the New York office, the only Australian.
Yeah.
So massive culture shock going in. I think in many ways that worked to my advantage. And we can talk about this later in the chat. But to me, the importance of being different and communicating in a different way, it's always been important. I think it's even more important right now, and we can go into why. But that was an advantage, right? Being in New York, being the only Australian, the only person communicating like me, the only person using Australian humor or whatever else comes from an Australian, it cut through. It really positioned me well. And then to your direct question, coming back to Australia, I mean, completely different. The work ethic's different. The sort of, what would you call it? The intensity is different.
Yep.
It's a much kinder place to work in Australia.
Yep.
Doesn't mean we're not hardworking. Doesn't mean we're not brilliant. In fact, I believe we are. But it's just kinder, and there's a bunch of other nice things that come with working in the Australian marketplace.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think Mark Pollard says a similar thing. He's like, Australians stick out, and it's a good thing. He's like, if you have a British accent, you instantly seem smarter, but if you've got an Australian accent, you seem a little more personable. And he's like, you just stick out like a sore thumb. But you're so right. Like now New York is just full of Aussie agency people.
Oh God, it's insane. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there now working in marketing or advertising.
But,
I mean, for a series of reasons. But one of them is too many damn Australians over there.
Yeah. When you founded Tong, which I can remember, like that was like the ideas agency. Like I remember everyone was like, I remember people's reaction when they heard the name, and I'm like, that's brilliant.
Oh my God.
And it was like Telstra, BlackBerry. Again, I had to explain what BlackBerry was to one of my new starters the other day. Kellogg's, What was the kind of agency you were trying to build, and what was the gap you saw in the market?
Yeah. Well, can I start with a funny story?
Absolutely.
So, before we launched the agency, I'd obviously come from a fashion background, like I'd been a model, I'd been on Australia's Next Top Model. So I had it in my mind that we would create a sort of an agency photo of the partners.
Yep.
And I would get all my fashion people involved, right? So we styled the hell out of it, hair and makeup.
Yep.
I had JD, who and others in clothing they don't usually wear, and what resulted was, I think it was the cover of Ad News or, one of the industry publications, was this photo of the three partners like dolled up. I mean, it was just, we got so sledged. It was, and you know what? As long as you're okay with the sledging, it's actually okay, because the phone started ringing immediately.
Really?
Right? Absolutely. Like, it was clearly different. We clearly had an aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
The name helped as well, right? Most people were calling up just to go, mate, why the hell did you call your agency Tong? So glad you asked. Let me give you our pitch in 3 points about why we called it Tong. But it was just very funny, the opening few months, because I think for the most part, we were getting sledged by the industry because of how much, a bunch of posers on the cover doing this fashion shoot. But clients, mate, they were interested. It was something different.
I spoke to Julian Cole, who you might have worked the same, and he said,
at Naked. Yeah.
And he said the thing that everyone remembers about Naked was the offices. And obviously I remembered the part Julian worked in, but then he explained all the different meeting rooms, like the golf course, the bathroom, and just that idea of understanding that novelty or distinction, and I mean novelty in the positive way, but that distinctiveness and just doing something differently still counts for so much.
Look, I think it counts for more than ever. So just on that area you're talking about, which was called the Ideas Finder. So that was Paul Swan, who I think he's over at Thinkerbell now. So Paul Swan and I were I think it was either executive ideas directors or chief ideas directors, I can't remember, whatever, running the creative department. So along with JD, who did a lot of the fabrication, we came up with that idea and delivered that Ideas Finder, which basically was a circular room with 4 breakout rooms that were themed around places where you naturally have ideas.
Yeah.
So one was a golf course, one was a bathroom with a functioning toilet, one was a pool room, etc. Right? And we would bring clients into the circular room, briefing, and then go out wide, ideate in these rooms, come back in. All the paint in the circular room was magnetic. So all of the ideas would go up in the walls.
Yeah.
You'd start with a clean slate and you'd walk out with a room surrounding you with all of the ideas you just had in the Ideas Finder. So yeah, that was a fun little expression, that one. I liked it.
When you were setting up Tong, what were the lessons you took, and what did you want your culture or your craft to be in there that you thought? I don't know, like the similarity I had that with other founders is like, I saw someone doing it and thought, I can do this better. You don't realize how hard it is until you do it yourself. But what were your driving forces? What were the motivators? What did you want to do differently?
Yeah, look, lots of things, but I think the hint is in our tagline back then, which was big ideas delivered. And those 3 words really summed up what we're about. So, yeah, we wanted to have big ideas. So things with scale, things with longevity, hopefully things with budget so they can get momentum. We're focused in on ideas. So, yeah, we execute, but really we're disciplined about having true ideas, which can then be executed in a myriad of ways. And then finally delivered, which we used to underline in pitch meetings. So we talk about big ideas delivered and then underline delivered, which was, and we're going to do it, like actually execute, close the loop, measure it, and give you a resulting commercial outcome. So I don't know if anyone else was doing it. I feel like at the time it was pretty fresh in the sense that, just those 3 concepts together in one house. But yeah, that's the main thing we were trying to do. There was a bunch of other stuff like, for example, have a sort of a tight, loose feeling at the agency. So quite loose and fun and exploratory, but tight in the way we delivered and priced things. And so we tried to have that balancing act going. Yeah.
And when you went from, employee to leader, employee to manager, employee to business owner, what were the skills or what were your blind spots even that you had to kind of sharpen up on? Like, were you a people manager? Like, were you that, or is that?
I mean, yes, people reported into me, and look, they did it naked and eventually at BBDO, and I also worked at another place called Kirschenbaum Bond and Partners where I had reports. And so yes, I guess I was a people manager. Certainly I like to think I'm the style of manager that gets in there and leads by example and does the work. One, because I think it drives alignment and it gets people to understand what good looks like. But also I get joy out of doing what I do. So I don't want to be removed and not doing the work. I want to be right there doing the work. So partly for me, but also I think it's a better way to manage. Anyway, what were the blind spots? Gosh, I mean, heaps. Look, I was a very different person back there. I'm definitely not going to say I'm mature now, but I was a lot less mature back then. So, I needed to maybe, to quote the TV show, curb my enthusiasm a little bit, curb some of my expressive nature once I was in a role where I had a leadership shadow, right? Like people, obviously when it is a weird transition because even if you're at the top of an agency and you've got reports, that's very different from being the, in inverted commas, founder.
Yeah.
Right? And I see this, these days I have a very small business and we help lots of other businesses. I work with founders of agencies and I see them suffering from this same founder piece, which is, when you're the founder, you're more than just the boss, right? It's kind of your house. Yep. Therefore, people start, feathering you a little bit and maybe not giving you the whole truth and protecting you from problems. And all this sort of stuff starts to happen. After a while, those layers get sort of more and more opaque. And if you don't keep an eye on it, you can actually be relatively disconnected with the truth of the business, with the health of the business, and sort of kept in this sort of protected space, which is very, very dangerous for the individual, but also for the agency or for the business, shall I say. I mean, it's more than just advertising, just any business. That's something that I had to get used to and definitely try and pierce through, right?
Yeah.
And my style, again, was to get in and do the work, be shoulder to shoulder with people and demonstrate, number one, I don't think I'm any better than you. And number two, I love the work. I'm here to do great work. I hope the best work of my career this week and next week. So, let's go together.
What is that lesson to founders where, we do get shielded and it's our own fault because our reaction, it's our baby. It is our house. I love that expression. And you're in my house, it's my rules, but at the same time, you're inviting people to collaborate with you. But I find I'm my worst enemy where sometimes they'll see a little too much on my face or I'll care about the wrong thing on the wrong day. So what's your advice to founders to kind of prevent that or start to solve that if it happens?
Yeah. Well, firstly, get closer to the work.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered that, but I think that's a really quick way to pierce through it. Secondly, set the expectations for how you want the business to run and your involvement. A lot of the times I find founders have an assumed role and an assumed way of engaging with the team, with the work. Yet when you ask the team, it's actually a little bit ambiguous. So I think getting really clear on what you want, you've got to do some soul searching yourself and then explaining that and communicating that to the team. That'd be my second piece. I guess third, and this takes a bit of bravery / I guess vulnerability, is creating the gap for others to step up.
Yeah.
Right? Like founders, certainly founders that really care about their business, they're quite quick to step in and fill problems and fill the gap that gets left by something.
Yeah.
A wise founder probably sits back for a second and leaves that space for the MD or the CEO or for the account director or for someone else in the business to step up and do something about it.
Yeah.
And again, that takes bravery, especially, if it's high consequence, mission critical stuff. It's pretty hard to hold yourself back. But if you don't, how could you ever expect people to step up?
Yeah,
so you've got to make that space for people so they can step into those moments and rise.
Yeah. No, I really resonate with that, especially that making space. Like as a founder, I'm quick to solve and I'm impatient to wait.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just and you don't want to.
Yeah.
When you sold Tong, I think it was about 2017. It was STW, and then it became AKQA. How did that feel? What was the emotions going through you when that was happening? Were you done and wanted to see the back of it, or were you happy? Were you sad?
So there was actually a few other initials in there, by the way. It's slightly complicated. So we sold to STW, who became WPP, then Tong became AKQA. It actually became DT, and then it became AKQA. But anyway, by the by. How did it feel? For me, it felt great. Like, again, back to my stories of New York, some of that hard wiring, completion, I love it. I'm obsessed with it, in fact. I am looking to have a vision, execute brilliantly, and then tie it up and move on. Like basically have that as a thing that's been completed and then move on to the next thing. I love that sort of compartmentalizing ideas or energy. So for me, we started Tong with a couple of people, grew it to a decent sized agency, did a bunch of stuff we wanted to do. I was ready to, let's package it up, tie a bow, and then put it into a place that we had a lot of respect for, which was STW and WPP, and let it take on a life of its own and move on to something else. So, no, I felt great. I never looked back. I was delighted with the outcome.
Yeah.
And look, I speak to lots of founders who have an exit who don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But no, I have no remorse. I feel terrific about it.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't my last one and it won't be, and there's more to come, right? So I'm going to continue to do that sort of stuff.
Coming back to your book analogy or movie analogy, it is that creative need to see the end of a chapter, to see a story have an ending, to see a joke have a punchline, because it's so unsatisfying if it doesn't. There's almost that need to see that. And I fully get behind that. That's a really important one.
Look, I think that's right. And it's, and I like the fact you resonate with it. What I notice out there in the executive world is, because that's kind of where I spend my time now, a lot of people are good at starting something. They're quite good at setting out a vision and getting going, but then executing and closing, that is, and I mean closing the project, closing the initiative and having some measurement and results at the end.
Yeah.
That's often where people fall short.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's typical that people love or like or even do that full circle on initiatives, ideas, concepts, whatever it may be. Because again, it could just be in business. Like, hey, we've got this strategic initiative we're going to do for 12 months. I find people great at coming up with it, putting all the systems in place and starting, closing the loop, measurement, tracking. That's often where people fall down, in my opinion.
Yeah. Speaking of the executive coaching, there was another great quote I read by you when you wrote that book, Winning the Room, which again is a great book. And you said, audiences are not obligated to engage with the speaker. Rather, it's a nuanced relationship that's more akin to a trade. Generosity is key. Where did this obsession with the pitching start, and what do most people get wrong about it?
Yeah. So it started back in New York. I was a terrible presenter. I used to call in sick if I had a hint that I was going to be presenting.
Wow.
I just wouldn't show up. And my boss, who was a brilliant presenter, would go and present it and win, and no one would think any differently, right? Like, I wasn't missed. I was a junior burger. So I got away with that for a while. When Phil Dusenberry, who was an absolute luminary in the industry, when he was leaving BBDO, he got up and did a very short keynote, basically got all the agency into one room, downtown New York, and did a very small little talk, and then welcomed in the new big boss, a guy from London who'd just flown in. And everyone in the audience was skeptical. He got in there and he presented for 8 minutes, and he turned the whole audience towards him. I watched it. Everyone from juniors like me to mids to seniors to the cleaner, everybody was now on Team Andrew.
Yeah,
and
wow.
again, we'd been on Team Phil. Like we had Phil tattoos, right? Like we were Phil people.
Yeah.
And we'd become Andrew people in 8 minutes. That's where my true obsession started, because I was like, man, that's magic, and I need some, and I need to incorporate that into my practice.
Yeah.
So then I went and did every course you can imagine. I started writing down observations of my boss at the time, again, who was brilliant, and other brilliant people around me. You know, they're amazing orators over there in America, maybe particularly in New York. And I started building a body of work that I used on myself. Once I had an agency, I trained people in my agency. Then clients got a whiff of it. I started teaching clients. I then got a book deal, blah, blah, blah. So it all happened quite organically, but it came from a place of pain, right? Like absolute deficiency and pain in my life, which I was able to solve. Not saying I'm an amazing presenter, but I enjoy it now, and I get some good feedback. And that has become what winning the room is today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
What's
it's
the
a
most
long
common
story, but
No, it's a great one. I love that idea.
It's been a 20-year obsession for me, man.
I love that idea of writing from your own growth and your own pain. I think that's such a powerful way. And again, Julian Cole said the same thing. He's like, I felt like the imposter. I needed to write this down. Then suddenly giving it as a gift to somebody else became much more rewarding.
Yeah.
And Clive Bircham, who founded TCO, he recommended a great book called The Second Mountain to me. I mentioned it before on the show, but it's cool. About what happens after you've learned and conquered your own mountain. Again, I need to read the thing, but the premise is brilliant. Yeah. What's the number one thing you see people getting wrong with pitching? I know there's a lot of lessons in the book, but what's the number one?
Look, I get asked this often. I could give you my normal answer, but I'd like to be a little bit more novel. Okay, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you my normal answer, and then I'm going to give you a more novel answer. So the normal answer is people think it's a one-way discipline or a one-way moment. As in, hi audience, you're here to listen to my presentation, and I'm going to now present to you or pitch to you. That is wrong. Sorry, it's just straight up wrong. I know we don't like absolutes anymore in the world. Everything's a maybe. No, it's wrong. It's a two-way dialogue. It must be, right? You're communicating, they need to be communicating too. And it's your responsibility as the presenter to draw them in, right? Could be provocative questions, could be giving them space, could be calling out by name. You know, hey, Jai, looks like you've got a question. Draw them in. Could be an arresting image that you put on the screen and say nothing. Wait for a hand to go up. What the hell's that? So glad you asked. What do you think it is? You know, or maybe you give them prediction questions, right?
Yeah.
So audience, if 1 and 2 are true, and we've got some evidence to back it up, what do we think happened next?
Yeah.
And just wait, right? Pause, be comfortable with silence. Watch hands go up, and then you're dialoguing, right? So to me, that's the biggest, most common issue. And again, it's kind of like a big theoretical point, which there's so many different things you need to do to make that change. But getting your head around, oh, okay, this is not about me presenting. It's actually about us having a two-way moment. It changes everything. Changes the slides you might present. If you're not doing slides, changes the words you're going to say, changes the visuals, changes the pace, changes the way you use eye contact, the way you use body language. Like everything changes based on understanding this is a two-way experience.
Yeah.
And let me give you my slightly more novel one, which is people don't take enough risks.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. Because most people don't enjoy presenting, what we do is we sort of do like not the bare minimum, but we stay within maybe what we've done before, what we're comfortable with. So we end up doing something which is relatively formulaic, and what I call that is a pattern, right? So like a presentation you've seen before.
Yeah.
And I have been a client, as you mentioned, at Mambo, and I saw agencies pitch. I've also had my own other businesses where I've seen providers pitch, and it's shocking how similar presentations are, like shocking. And you can sit there in the start of the meeting and just go, oh yeah, got it. I kind of know what you're about to say. And then you sit through 45 slides.
And you wait for it to end.
Yeah.
And I think just like having a boring room kind of gets the same outcome.
Yep.
You know, your slide deck is about as close to creating a new room in your agency, in your client's office, your agency's office as you can.
Yeah.
And if you don't break the environment, I don't think you break the thinking. And yeah, if you've been agency side and you watch an agency pitch, you can work out what the next 30 slides are going to be from their first 3. You know where it's going.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, there are examples all over the world at the moment where being different is hugely valuable. I'll give you a very recent one, which I'm sure you saw, which is Justin Bieber at Coachella. You know, he's done it twice now. He did it at, I think it was the Grammys as well.
Yeah.
Completely zigged when everybody else zagged, right?
Yeah.
Everyone else is doing big production. Everyone else is doing, you know, backup dancers and, you know, big fashion, big pyrotechnics, whatever else they're doing. Justin Bieber's in there scrolling through YouTube, singing along to his own songs.
Yeah.
I get it. Some people are critical of it, but it generated more news, more talkability, more gravity than anything else at Coachella.
Yeah.
And sure, Justin Bieber has his own gravitational pull, but if he'd got up there and done something similar to everybody else, it would have faded into the rest of Coachella with a bit of Justin Bieber topspin. But instead, he did something completely different, completely fresh. He doubled down on the authenticity piece. And I think it's the only thing we're talking about from Coachella. Like, did anyone else perform? I haven't heard about anybody else.
Who knows? Like,
exactly.
when Beyonce did the Cowboy Carter like that Cowboy Carter, when she did the full album, that was an exceptional performance by an exceptional artist. But that was scale, grandeur, and having the Beyonce effect. And yeah, you're right. Bieber did the complete opposite, the zig, and really lent into the image he's crafted for himself of him trailing behind his beautiful wife, who's always, you know, the fantastic version of fame. And he's just, you know, being himself, whatever version that might be. So I really agree with you, Dan, because you don't remember anyone else who's played. And to have a formula for Coachella, which is, again, I'm more of a Burning Man guy, but like, you know, it's mainstream. Like it's formulaic as it comes.
Exactly. And as we lean now into AI and automation, if not right now, very soon, the content will be high quality and similar.
AI music is terrifying.
Exactly.
I thought I'd found a great artist the other day who was remixing 50 Cent songs into cowboy numbers, country numbers.
Yeah.
And I was hooked until they were forced to change the label of this artist to something AI. And I sat there and I felt a bit sick.
Yeah.
And I'm a muso anyway and used to perform in bands.
Well, that's where we're headed, man. That's where we're headed. And translate that to the person in the agency, as in your audience. Well, if every agency basically has democratized content, right? Whatever the problem is, AI is going to be able to spit out pretty close to the perfect answer. A media problem, an exposure problem, a creative problem, right? It's going to be able to spit out close to perfect, and it's going to be matching luggage with everybody else. So how do you stand out? Exactly, good enough. So how do you stand out? It's got to be the way you communicate it, the way you make people feel in the room. That's got to be the difference.
And it's that second part I really resonate with the most. How do you make people feel in the room? I think from a communication style, I can see an email, I can see a Slack message. I think we're going to hit this big dead point, this 0 point of everyone now writes a little bit like an LLM because everyone's seen it and they think that's how you do it. And I think then we're going to see, you know, a bit of an inflection point of now everyone finds their style again. But right now we've just got to ride this awful wave of everyone starting to sound the same for a while, and then people will find their voice again.
Yeah.
And maybe,
I think that's a very positive way to look at it. I think
maybe that's just me hoping.
And look, I hope you're right. I think maybe the slightly darker version is everything that isn't IRL is going to be the same. So suddenly IRL will be hugely potent, valuable, etc. And everything else will be almost functional and not dismissed, but just relied upon to be what it is, as opposed to looking for inspiration in, I don't know, someone's LinkedIn post, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, no. There was an article I read where it said a criminologist told you at 12 that you'd be a Renaissance man. And you've built agencies, coached billionaires, judged reality TV, directed films, launched fashion brands. Is the Renaissance man a strength, or does it come at a cost?
Oh, look, I'm not sure if it's a cost, but it's another great example of I was told a story which resonated with me, and then I pursued it. So I actively pursued a Renaissance style career. And it was way back when his name was Humphrey. He was a guy who read palms and fingerprints for the police force. a brilliant guy. Anyway, and yeah, he told me that, and it resonated. I thought, yeah, I think that's right, and I think I could fulfill that. And then, yeah, again, it's one of those undercurrent stories that I've sort of held on to.
Yeah.
Look, for me, it's really worked out. It's been terrific. It's made my career hugely interesting and joyful for myself. It's given me the flexibility to adapt and change as and when I need to and want to. So, look, I would say, all things being equal, I think it's a positive for me. If I then turn my attention to people in the audience and what we're looking into for the next decade or two,
Yeah.
flexibility, dealing with ambiguity, ability to pivot and change and switch it up, I think these are the number one skills. So, the idea of not being a Renaissance man or woman would feel unsafe to me. Like, to me, you've got to have that level of breadth and range and flexibility to stay relevant now and into the next 20 years.
I couldn't agree more. And I think there are people who have become almost obsessed with their own craft, but maybe not seeing the blind spot that their craft is being flexible, adapting, communicating with people, working with teams. I love that idea of being comfortable with ambiguity, because if there's no constant in the world right now, it is very ambiguous where everything is going.
Oh, gotcha.
And the media doesn't help, and what that does to even, if you're looking at share prices, they're no help either. There's no marker anymore that can give anyone any kind of surety or kind of confidence outside the world they're building for themselves. And we always used to talk about, and again, this is me starting to date myself, I-shaped people and T-shaped people, but it really is those M-shaped people of having multiple disciplines. But the thing that connects them, you're 100% correct, is how am I working with different people? How am I honing my own craft, getting better at my own practice of working with other people? And there's something that I think a lot of people say, which is, oh, I'm a creative problem solver, which, again, I've gotten a bit cynical as I've gotten older, and it makes my eyes roll every time somebody says that. But I think the point they're missing is, to be a creative problem solver, you have to be able to deal with risk, because I think risk and creativity you can't have one without the other. And I think that's so important to kind of take forward. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. And look, I would call myself just straight up a problem solver, because of my, I guess, personality, history, skill set. Often I apply creativity to solve those problems. But I think about it slightly more agnostically, in the sense that, I'm just as happy to solve a problem with something quite analytical and fast as I am to solve it with a big, voluminous idea that's going to take lots of money and 12 months to roll out. Like, to me, the joy is solving the problem.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I've sort of, I guess I've broadened out from just being in advertising, because I'm enjoying problems in, banking, insurance, fashion, media, all sorts of other avenues, which are beyond a typical advertising problem solver. One thing I wanted to say about this idea of, the only constant is change, and geez, we're going into ambiguity, and everything is ambiguity. Look at the news today. God, you wouldn't know where to look. It's just, so much is happening, so much is in flux. I think it was a Grant Kenny quote, or one of those Iron Men anyway. He basically said the conditions are always perfect. He would turn up at any event, he would look out at the surf, and he would say, conditions are perfect. Whether the waves were 6 foot or 1 foot, And that's because everyone's in the same surf, right? Everyone on that day of the competition are going to be in that same ocean. So conditions are perfect. I think the same applies now.
Yeah.
In fact, if there's this much turmoil going on in the world and this much fear and change and everything else, what a lovely way to bring people's attention to what you want to be talking about. Why wouldn't you use that as almost like the dark side that your idea, your initiative, your business pushes against? Like tension is golden, right? Yeah. And there's lots of things to have tension with right now. So, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to give people the idea that, it's all a Debbie Downer and God,
no.
Things are bad. Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff not going too well. Lots of things are in flux. I've definitely got some apprehension about a bunch of things that are happening. But I know that I and others can use that tension in order to make bigger, better ideas happen. So, yeah, conditions are always perfect.
I love that. That is definitely something I'm going to take forward. And, I think even on a small scale, when I think about agencies, again, they're the ones who always say, oh, everything's always changing, it's always people changing, all those things. But I love that idea. We're all in that same surf together. I think that's really powerful. On a really positive note, you're the founding creative director for Sown Hearts and Minds, and that involves a lot of coaching for an investor decks and pitches, I assume.
Yep.
What does that look like, and do they, do these billionaires take direction?
Yeah. So JD and myself got involved with Sown Hearts and Minds at the very beginning. So we're, co-founders, and it's been such a rewarding 10 years. So we've raised just shy of $100 million, which goes to medical research in Australia. Yes, we get to work with some of the brightest, best, most decent people in the world, internationally and locally. And yeah, I mean, look, JD and I work on the creative execution with a team at Sown Hearts and Minds. And as part of that, yes, I train the speakers on their pitches. So yes, I work with very interesting people on their pitches. The things I find most fascinating, number one, when you have a lot of knowledge, when you're an expert, it's very tricky to know what to say because everything's relevant. Everything adds value. Everything is learned and special. But you've only got 8 minutes on our stage. How the hell do you get from, a world of brilliance in this person to 8 minutes? That is a really tricky discipline, and I get a lot of joy out of helping them make that reductive move to 8 minutes. So that'd be the first thing. Like, I call it the tyranny of expertise. When you've got so much to say, it's hard to know what to leave out. And so what? Well, if you say everything, nothing lands, right? You're going to go straight over the top of people's heads. They're not going to know what to write down. You just miss the point. So that's why reductive thinking is important. So that's number one. Number two, I'm continually shocked at the people that turn up who I would assume are not going to be up for rehearsing, are not going to want to talk about details, are not going to put in the work. Instead, they're just going to show up and shoot from the hip. I have not found that in 10 years. Countless billionaires, countless thought leaders, countless experts, they all want to come and do the work. They all are willing to rehearse. They're willing to take feedback. They take it on. They grab that idea. They incorporate it. Like, I've found that to be incredibly rewarding. And again, it's just a reminder to myself, and to any of my clients that I work with, if I ever get to the point where I'm thinking, oh, you know what, I've got this, I'm not going to rehearse, or, oh, man, I'm an expert at this, I'll just see what happens. Mate, I slap myself in the face nice and hard, because these experts, these generous experts that present for us at Sown Hearts and Minds, they're way smarter than me. They're way more accomplished than me, and they're willing to put in the work. So for God's sake, I need to, and so do all of us.
I think that's a wonderful reminder, and I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind, that there's never a point where you should stop honing your craft, standing up for people, closing the loop, as you said. And if we go right back to the first comment where we started talking, it doesn't matter who's in the room. If you treat them any differently, you'll get a weird response. But if you treat them like everyone else, you're going to get a much better response. And, from my own experience working with different levels of people, sometimes they're sick of the way people treat them because they do treat them a bit differently. And I think there's nothing more rewarding, as you say, to kind of help people find their special moment, to help them be vulnerable enough to go, this is all I need to say, and rebuild their confidence at all these different levels.
Oh, it's very rewarding. Yeah, you've actually just given me a thought that I don't usually talk about, but I think it's worth just saying. So I actually think what you need to do in work and potentially in life is figure out the things that you want to do and then start talking to yourself and telling yourself about that. I'll give you an example. A while ago, I thought to myself, it'd be quite valuable if I could deal with the trickiest types of people. So the trickiest executives, the ones with the biggest egos, the ones that are hardest to sell to, the clients that agencies are like, oh God, that's your client? What a nightmare, right? I thought to myself, interesting, I could carve out a niche if I was the guy and maybe my agency was the agency that loved those people. So all the time, I say to people, I love tricky people. I love difficult clients.
Yeah.
I love the worst problems. That's what I love. Now, at the beginning, I was telling that to myself, almost coaching myself, and I'm not sure how true it was. Today, it's 100% true. I get my most joy and kicks out of dealing with the most difficult people and connecting with them, right?
Yeah.
Finding a way to connect with them. So anyway, it's a little bit woo-woo, but as you know, I spend half my time in Byron. But that self-talk, and maybe it's manifestation, but just telling yourself, I love difficult people. I love difficult people. And then you go and oh my God, that person looks really tricky to deal with. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call them directly. I'm going to turn up at their office and lean into it. Suddenly they change and they're like, okay. And you actually realize everyone's been skirting around that person because they're so tricky to deal with. Just by turning up and having a smile, suddenly, okay, I'll deal with that person. And then suddenly the only person or the only agency that person will deal with. Anyway, hopefully that's not too abstract, but it's certainly something that I've worked on and it works for me incredibly well.
Not at all, because I think, again, some of the conversations I've had is like once you teach somebody else something, you know it better because it forces you to hone your craft and have a really clear answer, and to be able to defend that answer later. I think that self-talk, look, I think everyone in Gen Z now calls it manifesting, but it is just refining what you already know. And, call it whatever you want, but it is, even for me, this whole process through agency land is me going back and working out all these lessons I learned, all these conversations I've had with you, JD, anyone along the line. I'm like, I need to document this for myself, but then share it with people so I know what the hell I just learned again.
Yeah.
And just so on that point around difficult people, I'm exactly the same, and mine's a little bit darker. It's like, I'll beat that person at this conversation. And that's my competitive nature going, I reckon I can get them to the table and have a positive outcome because I think, I'm just, what's the word? I'm kind of rearing up to them a bit. Like I kind of want to see if I can do this. It's more of a challenge for me. I probably should frame it a bit nicer these days, but we'll see how we go. JP, that was amazing, and I really thank you for your time because I know how busy you are. And as I said, I'll recommend your book to anyone because it's gold. So
thank you,
appreciate
Jai.
it, mate. See you
again.
You,
man. Take it easy.
Agency Land, a Survivors podcast, is hosted and produced by me, Jai Smith, founder and head of creative and strategy at Double Star Co. Our intro track, Crash and Burn, featuring North Lanes by Phase 1, used with the kindest of permissions from Fat Cat Music. Special thanks to Carla Munn and Jaron Norton for the art, design, and motion. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, leave us a review, and share it with somebody navigating agency life. Until then, you're good, get better, and stop asking for things.